Coming up tonight.
And then there were 7.
One is too many.
Another woman accuses Minnesota Democrat Senator Al Franken of inappropriate sexual conduct.
The latest disclosures, I think, have reached a tipping point.
After meeting with the top Democrat in the Senate and then his family, Franken prepares to make a major announcement. Congresswoman Barbara Comstock on what it all means for Democrats and Republicans. Plus,
today, I am delivering.
We'll go live to Jerusalem for the very latest on the embassy announcement. Ambassador John Bolton responds to critics and explains what it means for Trump diplomacy. And it's a rare moment of bipartisan unity, putting the brakes on an attempt to impeach President Trump. Will Democrat leaders who oppose impeaching the president get punished by their base? Clinton advisor Philippe Reines and Republican strategist Ron Bonjean will debate.
Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. Senator Franken will be making an announcement tomorrow. More details to come. That's where things stand at this hour with Democrat Senator Al Franken. His fellow Minnesota Democrat Amy Klobuchar tweeting she's confident he will do the right thing. Now, that would mean resigning as far as numerous lawmakers on the right and left are concerned. Yet another woman is accusing him of sexual misconduct in what's become a steady, daily drumbeat of accusations by women who worked with men in power, and in most cases, denials by those men. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry is here with the very latest on this rapidly unfolding scandal. Hi, Ed.
Good evening, Shannon. Top Democrats had been trying to get away with allowing Al Franken to stay in office while they punted the matter to the Senate Ethics Committee. But that became untenable politically for Democrats for 2 reasons. A 7th accuser came out against Franken, charging he tried to forcibly kiss her. And as we edge closer to the possibility that Republican Roy Moore may win that special election on December 12th, Democrats could want a clear shot at trying to remove him from office and trying to make the case that Republicans are not cleaning up their own house. In fact, we've learned Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer today pressed Franken and urged him to resign. Schumer later putting out a statement declaring, quote, "I consider Senator Franken a dear friend and greatly respect his accomplishments, but he has a higher obligation to his constituents and the Senate, and he should step down immediately." That demand capping off what was a dramatic day that started with Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand becoming the first one of his colleagues to demand Franken's resignation. The dam seemed to break within moments, as more than 30 Senate Democrats ended up joining Gillibrand and saying he must go. As the Democratic candidate in the Alabama Senate race, Doug Jones, tried to directly tie Roy Moore today to Al Franken. Watch.
I applaud the women that have come forward against Roy Moore, and I think it's time that those women be believed, just like the women that are coming out against Senator Franken.
Some Republicans today pushed back on that connection, noting Franken has admitted to some of the groping, while Moore has denied all of the allegations against him. Tomorrow, Franken will have an event revealing whether or not he is resigning. Shannon?
We're standing by for that. And in the meantime, the pressure on Franken also comes at a time when there are racial tensions bubbling inside the Democratic Party. What's that about?
Yeah, that's right. This is obviously one day after veteran Democratic Congressman John Conyers resigned under pressure. Politico is reporting the Congressional Black Caucus is furious that Conyers was pushed out, while white lawmakers in both parties are facing various allegations from Democrats like Franken to Republicans like Congressman Blake Farenthold and Roy Moore, who have obviously not stepped aside. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi only exacerbated the racial tensions in the Democratic Party by initially backing Conyers and even questioning the validity of some of his female accusers. But then after pressure from others on the left, Pelosi angered the Black Caucus by flip-flopping on Conyers. Watch.
Just because someone is accused, and was it one accusation? Is it 2? I think there has to be. John Conyers is an icon in our country.
Congressman Conyers should resign. Zero tolerance means consequences for everyone.
And there's more trouble for the Conyers family. Tonight reports that his son, John Conyers III, was arrested this year for domestic abuse, but not actually pressing and faced any criminal charges. Conyers III was endorsed by his dad for his own House seat, but the congressman's great nephew is also running, so the family drama continues, Shannon.
As we said, dinner around the Christmas table could get a little interesting.
Very
All right.
interesting.
Ed Henry, great to see you. Thank you. And in a unanimous vote last week, the House passed legislation co-sponsored by Congresswoman Barbara Comstock that will require lawmakers and Capitol Hill staffers to undergo sexual harassment training. As this is all playing out, the Congresswoman, a Virginia Republican, joins us live. Good to have you back with us this morning.
Good to be with you, Shannon.
Or tonight, let's talk about, you've got a hearing tomorrow, and you said that you don't know what you don't know about how wide this problem is. What do you hope to discover tomorrow?
Well, we are going to have witnesses from the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and our Office of Compliance, that was the office that would review these cases. And so we're going to hear from them on best practices, sort of like with the EEOC. They did a study last year where they looked at the whole problem of sexual harassment and found that it still is very pervasive throughout the workplace. That one of the things we know is that it's frequently not reported. But one of the things they have found is in-person training that really permeates and changes the culture, that really is embraced from the top down and really goes, throughout the whole system, that can change results and behavior and change the culture. So we want to get the best practices in place, really focus on the victims. We're going to be changing the law on how we treat the victims, put them on a level playing field, make it more victim friendly so they have a counsel or an advocate for them, because right now the system doesn't provide that. And then make sure we don't have taxpayer payments for any of this also. Well, and I'm pleased to report this has really been both bipartisan, really almost nonpartisan, and you've had the men be very, as well as the women in Congress, be very active on this. I know a lot of the focus, and you've just in the piece you showed, are the women speaking up, but the men feel strongly about it too, as do I, because we have so many of our good guys who I don't want to be, have associated with the bad behavior. And that's why we need to bring this out of the shadows, make sure these women are protected, and make sure it's a safe workplace for everybody, free of discrimination.
Well, and it's interesting because we talked about Blake Farenthold, a congressman out of Texas, is facing allegations, which he denies. He did engage in a settlement. He says he's now going to pay back the taxpayer money that was sent. Here's what he says now. I followed the rules, and the rules have strict confidentiality provisions in them designed to protect the victim, but they also protect the perpetrators, and that's the part that needs to be fixed. He has said that it's tough for him to come out and defend himself, but he says, both sides of this are bound by this confidentiality. Would you support legislation that will unmask the people who have had settlements and what the terms of those settlements were?
Yes, I do. And one of the things that we also support, though, is to look and make sure that the victims want to be able to come forward, because I think we have to protect the victims. And if they want to come forward and they want to unmask this, and in any way we can, make people have to pay back. But I think we need to make sure that it is something that the victims will go forward on, which in a number of these cases they have, with Conyers and with Congressman Farenthold. They've come forward to talk about their situations.
And that should be their decision, I mean, frankly, as being victims or alleged victims in many of these cases, because there are denials from Congressman Farenthold and many of the other men who've been accused. To that point, Senator Kennedy, a Republican out of Louisiana, had this to say tonight as we wait for a decision from Senator Franken. Here's Senator Kennedy.
There's an old saying, the truth will set you free, but sometimes it'll make you feel like hell in the first place. And a lot of people have been made to feel like hell because those who had or have power over them sought sexual gratification through the use of that power, and that's wrong. And in terms of Senator Franken, he's going to have to make his own decision.
So, of course, a number of Democrats today, men and women, there's this growing chorus that he needs to go. He'll make his own decision tomorrow. We'll get that announcement. But where do you think we draw the line? Because there are allegations against Democrats and Republicans, people who are elected, people who are running. Where do you say we have enough evidence that it's time for them to go or to drop out of a race, or say, listen, we need some due process for these people. These cases are all different. We need to, hear from everybody involved and make an educated, informed decision?
Well, I think what's happened and what's really made this a watershed moment is these cases that have come up, you've had numerous allegations. It's not a one-off situation. You have sort of predatory behavior, whether it's a Matt Lauer, which is the stories coming out on that are truly horrifying. And you see how he used his position of power, because sexual harassment isn't so much about sex as it's about power and misuse of power. So that's why we really need to, take this kind of action quickly and understand that Congress Congress, just like everybody else, has to live by the rules. And what we've seen in the workplace for years, one of my colleagues who worked on labor law said, he would go into the board of directors and say, we've investigated this, the CEO has to go, or whoever else. And so we need to do the same thing in Congress. Now, if they want to drag it out and do an ethics investigation, like with Senator Franken, I called for him to, resign, I guess weeks ago when it first came out, because I don't think we should waste the taxpayers' resources on those investigations either, particularly when you have serial abuse by whether it's Congressman Conyers or Franken, or any of the other people who've come up. And I've been consistent on all of these. I've said, when you have serial abuse and you see it time after time, there's patterns of behavior. Predators behave in a similar pattern. Like you heard with Charlie Rose, where they said, oh, did he use the shower trick? Or did he do this? And you're seeing people who didn't know each other come up with the same stories. Those things ring true. Now, if they want to come out and defend themselves, they have that right. But I think what we're seeing is we want Congress to have to live by the rules of everybody else, certainly no taxpayer dollars involved, and a new system that will protect the victims and, most importantly, stop this in the first place.
Yeah, regardless of party, we need to be consistent.
Exactly,
all of us,
and that's what we've had, support from Republicans and Democrats alike, men and women, and that's the change here, and that's the watershed that we have to make some fundamental changes.
We like to see that on the Hill when they can unite around something that's positive change. Congresswoman, thanks for coming in again.
Thank you.
All right, well, unless somebody bails on it again, the president will meet with the big four congressional leaders tomorrow afternoon. Because of Senate rules, Republicans need votes from Democrats to pass a spending bill by the end of Friday to keep your government funded. Well, the GOP may also need help from Democrats in the House. With that in mind, President Trump says if things go awry, blame the Democrats.
They are looking at shutting down. They want to have illegal immigrants, in many cases, people that we don't want in our country. They want to have illegal immigrants pouring into our country.
Now, a number of Democrats say they don't actually want illegal immigrants pouring into the country, but they are asking for protection for the so-called Dreamers. These are hundreds of thousands of immigrants who came to the U.S. illegally when they were brought here as children. Many of them rallied on Capitol Hill today.
92 days since this administration made this cruel and reckless decision to end DACA. We cannot wait a day longer. So let's tell them, don't tell us you'll fix this in January. Fix it now.
Well, the House is expected to vote tomorrow on what most expect will be a 2-week funding extension. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell also putting on the pressure over there, urging his colleagues to join him in getting that done. Former President Barack Obama reportedly invoking the specter of Nazi Germany in a roundtable discussion last night in Chicago. Mr. Obama worried about what he called a nativist mistrust rising around the world, and then warned about the danger of becoming complacent, which he said is what happened in Germany in the 1930s. Quote, "We have to tend to this garden of democracy or else things could fall apart quickly," he said. 60 million people died, so you've got to pay attention and vote. We're going to have more on that controversial comment later on in the show. Well, almost every recent president has campaigned on moving the embassy to Jerusalem, but only one has started to deliver on that once in office. Is Trump diplomacy putting the pieces in place for a new Middle East? We're going to ask former ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. He is up next. And the House passes a new bill to allow law-abiding gun owners to carry across state lines. But it's what could get attached to that popular bill that has some gun rights activists sounding the alarm. We'll tell you about that. And the Santa Ana winds are still whipping the Southern California wildfires out of control. We will take you live to the fire line.
These are days that break your heart, but these are also days that show the resilience of our city.
A little past 6 in the morning in Jerusalem, where much has technically changed thanks to a major announcement Wednesday on the Holy City by President Donald Trump.
While previous presidents have made this a major campaign promise, they failed to deliver. Today, I am delivering. I've judged this course of action to be in the best interests of the United States of America and the pursuit of peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
David Lee Miller joins us now from Jerusalem on how the city is looking as the sun rises there. Good morning, I guess we should say.
And good evening to you. You know, reaction here to President Trump's announcement acknowledging and recognizing that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel is pretty much divided in very much the same way as this holy city. The Israelis welcomed and applauded the decision. The Palestinians denounced it. In Gaza and on the West Bank, Palestinians took to the streets, demonstrating against both the United States and Israel. American and Israeli flags were burned. There were no reports of any violence, but Palestinian leaders are calling for 3 days of rage that some fear could turn bloody. Rival Palestinian political groups, Hamas, deemed a terrorist organization by the U.S., and Fatah, seemed united in their outrage at President Trump. One Hamas official said the Palestinians are at a dangerous crossroads and will either remain or perish. The Palestinian president, in a recorded televised speech, said Mr. Trump's announcement is a declaration of withdrawal from mediating the peace process. And symbolizing now the anger and frustration, Palestinians in Bethlehem pulled the plug on the normally lit Christmas tree in Manger Square.
Bethlehem City tonight, they decide to shut down the Christmas tree and all the lights and decoration in Bethlehem after Trump's speech about considering Jerusalem the capital of Israel.
Well, Bethlehem's Christmas tree went dark. Israeli officials applauded President Trump's decision and illuminated the U.S. and Israeli flags on the walls of the old city in the heart of Jerusalem. Jerusalem's mayor said Mr. Trump's announcement sends a very clear message to the entire world that the U.S. stands with Israel and the Jewish people. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his country was profoundly grateful for what he called an historic decision.
We're profoundly grateful for the president for his courageous and just decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and to prepare for the opening of the U.S. Embassy here. This decision reflects the president's commitment to an ancient but enduring truth, to fulfilling his promises, and to advancing peace.
Although the U.S. could have converted an existing consulate in Jerusalem to an embassy, the plan now is for entirely brand new construction. That means moving day from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is at least several years away. Shannon?
David Lee Miller for us in Jerusalem. Thank you very much. Well, critics of today's announcement at home and abroad are citing the president's decision as a setback to the pursuit of peace in the Middle East. He sees it differently.
This is a long overdue step to advance the peace process and to work towards a lasting agreement. Israel is a sovereign nation with the right, like every other sovereign nation, to determine its own capital.
Here now to discuss the historic move, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton. Ambassador, always good to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
Okay, so let me throw out some of the criticism and then I'll get your response, what you think about this. Abroad, we have UK Prime Minister Theresa May saying this: we disagree with the U.S. decision to move its embassy to Jerusalem. We believe it's unhelpful in terms of prospects for peace and in the region. She says their embassy in Israel is going to stay in Tel Aviv, no plans to move it. Here at home, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi saying this: in the absence of a negotiated settlement between Israel and the Palestinians, moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem now may needlessly spark mass protests, fuel tensions, and make it more difficult to reach a durable peace.
Flatly wrong. Look, let's start with the basics. Israel is just about the only country in the world where America's embassy is not in the capital city. Suppose we said we'll put the American embassy in the United Kingdom in Manchester rather than London. How much sense would that make? Why are we not in Jerusalem already with the full embassy? Because going back 70 years to a General Assembly, UN General Assembly Resolution 181 that tried to carve Jerusalem out as a completely international city under the authority of the UN Trusteeship Council. Guess what? That was 70 years ago. That resolution is a dead letter. Trump today recognized reality. You can forget about all the rhetoric that you've just quoted, and I'm sure pages more of it. So in recognizing reality, he popped a lot of people's delusions. But I tell you this, you cannot have secure and lasting peace in as complex a situation as the Middle East founded on soap bubbles. It's going to be founded on reality, and the reality is Jerusalem is Israel's capital. Deal with it.
Okay. that wraps it up. The end. No, we still have more questions for you. Okay, so there are those, though, on the right who say they feel like this is a half measure in some sense because, you know, we showed the consulate annex, this huge structure that was built. A lot of people there on the ground say it was always anticipated if they moved the embassy, this would be it. So now the president's talking about getting architects and hiring people, and this is going to take years and years. People question whether he'll still be president when this happens. So is it an empty promise? Some people feel like, you know, they're not getting what they expected, that this embassy move is not going to happen anytime soon.
Well, I think it depends on what happens next. I think the president made it pretty clear he thinks things are going to start moving. He said in his speech we need to hire planners and architects and engineers. I tell you who the biggest opponents of this decision today are. It's not Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority. It's the career bureaucracy at the State Department, which has opposed the idea of recognizing Jerusalem as the capital since Israel declared independence. So I think what the president needs to do is insist on maybe weekly reports from the State Department. What progress have you made? I think Congress has a role to play here. They said 22 years ago, almost unanimously, we want the capital in Jerusalem. If you just let the bureaucracy work on its own, 3 years from now, they'll still be doing site selection. So the real test here is in the implementation. I think that lies in the president's hands. And as I say, I think he knows where he wants to go.
Okay, I'm told that you are going to meet with the president tomorrow at the White House. So do you want to tell us everything you're going to talk about?
I think probably the repeal of Obamacare will be on the agenda.
Somehow it doesn't strike me as that would be your top topic. Do you think you'll discuss these issues? Obviously foreign policy, but North Korea and now out with a statement tonight saying it's just a matter of when a war will start.
Well, look, there are a lot of complicated issues. The president's now roughly 1 year into his administration, and like most presidents, he's tried to focus on domestic issues, but these foreign policy problems that he's inherited continue to press him, and I look forward to the meeting.
Well, I'm sure he'll take some of your advice, if not all of it. Ambassador, great to see you.
Glad to be
Thanks
here.
for coming in. Our new developments tonight in the Harvey Weinstein sex harassment scandal. We'll go live to Trace Gallagher in Los Angeles with the latest on what we know about a possible Hillary Clinton connection. And later, why does the mainstream media love Colin Kaepernick? He just won another huge award, this time from Sports Illustrated. Plus, this is turning into a life or death battle. Adam Housley joins us with a preview from the front lines of that growing California wildfire. Adam.
Shannon, the forecasted winds are back here in Ventura County and in Southern California, stoking flames, moving this Thomas fire towards the town of Ojai in one place, and also worrying thousands of firefighters what else they may face in these winds. We'll have a live report of the latest on the fire conditions coming up.
Section of Los Angeles today as yet another section of Southern California found itself under siege. Let's go straight to Adam Housley with the very latest details. He's there on the front lines. Adam.
Yeah, Shannon, we had about 12 hours of no winds here in Southern California, at least in most areas. But here in the foothills above Ventura, where a couple hundred homes burned down, the winds have come back. They're forecasted to come through here tonight, in some cases possibly gusting up to 80 miles an hour. You can see behind me the trees are starting to blow. My hair's starting to move. If we have some live aerials, too, to show you how the wind stoked the fire. The Thomas fire, which has now burned more than 90,000 acres, is burning towards Ojai and towards a couple of other areas where there are more rural homes, but still threatening homes. And as these winds pick up, the worry is this fire could spread 2 to 3 miles at a time, depending on how strong the winds go. Also, where I'm standing is you're seeing those live flames coming from the Thomas fire here in Southern California. Where I'm standing, even though there's several hundred homes burned here, a couple hundred burned here, they came through here with fire engines tonight, spraying everything down as much as they could. And I've already seen embers go by, because even though these homes are burned down, there are still hot spots, and those embers can blow down into other neighborhoods, potentially causing yet another fire in this area. So Southern California obviously under a very serious fire watch. In some areas, the worst fire watch we've seen in years, meaning very low humidity, very high wind, and of course very dry here. So firefighters, more than 2,000, are fighting fires here, but at the same time keeping an eye open, hoping nothing new starts and nothing new gets stoked anywhere else, because it has been quite a battle for a couple of days, Shannon.
It is incredibly tough work, and those folks are very brave to be out there. Adam, thank you for bringing us the very latest. All right, we are going back to where it all began. Disgraced Hollywood movie mogul Harvey Weinstein kicked off this current wave of sex harassment scandals. And tonight, some of the women he allegedly assaulted are taking serious legal action, not only against him, but also others they say helped to cover up his behavior. Trace Gallagher has all details for us. He's live. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Shannon. The class action lawsuit was filed by 6 women, but they claim to represent hundreds of others, including dozens who have already come forward, like high-profile actresses Angelina Jolie and Ashley Judd. And the suit is hoping to compel other potential victims who may be waiting in the shadows to also come forward. A joint statement released by the plaintiffs reads in part, quoting, "It has been 2 months and the world is still asking how this could have happened. How could so many women have been violated? How could so many people have covered up for him? How could so many people have done nothing to help? Money seems to be the answer." The suit is requesting that Weinstein and his legal team confess to the wrongs perpetrated by him and his enablers. But so far, Harvey Weinstein has unequivocally denied any non-consensual sex. However, there are now more than a dozen investigations into Weinstein's alleged sexual misconduct underway in Los Angeles, New York, and London. And there are more lawsuits coming, including one from Harvey Weinstein's former personal assistant, who claims that part of her job was to provide him with injections of erectile dysfunction medication and to stock an apartment with women's lingerie. The former assistant claims she, too, was repeatedly sexually harassed. And now actress and director Lena Dunham says she was troubled by Harvey Weinstein's visible presence during Hillary Clinton's presidential run. Dunham says she thought it was a bad idea for Weinstein to be hosting fundraisers and appearing at campaign events, so she warned the campaign's deputy communication director, saying, quote, "I just want to let you know that Harvey's a rapist and that this is going to come out at some point." Magazine editor Tina Brown says she cautioned a member of Clinton's inner circle about Harvey Weinstein back during her 2008 presidential run. Shannon.
All right, Trace Gallagher with the latest there out of L.A. Thank you. Tensions with North Korea raising new concerns for American athletes competing in next year's 2018 Olympic Games in South Korea. A full report straight ahead. And the president survives an impeachment vote, this time thanks to a lot of help from Democrats. Now, are they going to get heat from the left? Stick around for a high-powered debate coming up.
President and has betrayed his trust as President of the United States to the manifest injury of the people of the United States.
All right, Philippe, I'm going to start with you. Is any of that, do you think, true? And does it rise to the level of an impeachable offense?
Some of it I agree with. Some of it I think is not right or wrong. It's just an observation. But I think what's interesting here is that there really is not a set definition of what is or isn't impeachable. The Constitution. High crimes and misdemeanors. Okay, but high crimes and misdemeanors does not necessarily mean a crime. If President Trump were to go live in Mar-a-Lago year-round and never do his job, that's an impeachable offense. If you were to go shoplift at Whole Foods, that's not necessarily an impeachable offense. So there is and I don't mean to be legalistic about it, but people are going to take different interpretations of what it is. Some people think that his behavior and his erraticism and his acting out is a basis for it. I think what you've seen this week are more people coming forward, more Democrats mostly, in light of John Dowd, his attorney's statement, and thinking, okay, this is obstruction. I think people are going to, on a rolling basis, come to the conclusion of whether they think there's something there or not.
Yeah, 58 of them today voted.
A month from now, it could be 158.
It might, but let me just read a little bit of the part of the articles of impeachment that he included. He said on October 22nd, 2017, Donald John Trump made a public statement substantially as follows. Wacky Congresswoman Wilson is the gift that keeps on giving for the Republican Party. A disaster for Dems. You watch her in action and vote R. Thereby casting contempt on an African-American female member of Congress, inciting hate and hostility and sowing discord among the people of the United States. He called her wacky, Ron.
This whole thing is wacky. Like, this doesn't make any sense. It's the impeachment vote today was a needless distraction. And it frankly is a gift to Republicans because Republicans are trying to get things done. We just passed tax reform, and Democrats are over here in a corner, 58 of them, supporting impeaching the President of the United States when we're actually trying to get real work done. What this also does is undermines the liberal left-wing billionaire activist Tom Steyer, who has lots of commercials on lots of cable news networks right now pushing for an impeachment of the president. I think that completely undercuts it. Doesn't make any sense to me while they're doing this. I understand that there may be fundraising purposes, and these 58 folks going back to the districts to say that they tried to do something about it, but in the end, nothing's going to happen here.
Well, and the leadership basically was saying, we're not for this. Let's move on. We do have things to do. I want to get real quick reaction from both of you, though. Remarks by former President Obama saying, we have to tend this garden of democracy or else things could fall apart quickly, referring to the Holocaust and to Nazi Germany, apparently saying 60 million people died, so you've got to pay attention and vote. Philippe, when Republicans talk about Nazi or Hitler or anything like that, it literally feels like all hell breaks loose, but no one seems too upset about President Obama invoking it. He never said.
Well, I'm going to guess if I was sitting at home tonight watching Fox all night that hell is breaking loose over that comment. Yes, but I do think that shows the depth of concern people have about what they're seeing. I mean, this is President Obama, like him or not. He is a pretty level-headed guy. In fact, even by supporters, he was called too level-headed. I think he was called Dr. Spock by some. For him to say something like that, I think it really does reflect what a lot of people are feeling. And to go back to what we're talking about in impeachment, I do think we should give people the benefit of the doubt, not just in Congress, but around the country. There are people who believe the president should be impeached because they don't like what's happening in the country. It's not because tax reform did or didn't pass, repeal or not. And I think you're seeing a little bit of that in that comment.
We got to go. So quick 10 seconds from you, Ron, on the invoking Nazi Germany.
Well, I just think it's a mistake to ever say Nazis or Hitler or anything like that. I don't think it's appropriate. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are supporting Republicans, supporting the president for getting things done.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Philippe and Ron, good to see you both.
Thank you.
You can go back to your Twitter.
We're in a Twitter war.
They're in a Twitter war. Tune in and you can see more. All right, against the backdrop of war games, nuclear threats, and almost no Russian competitors, what can American athletes expect from the 2018 Winter Games in North Korea? Leland Vittert is here with a preview. Hey, Leland.
Oh, evening, Shannon. Not a warm welcome for the North Koreans, that's for sure. The North Koreans are now saying the outbreak of war on the Korean Peninsula is an established fact. And that threat is clearly changing the U.S. calculus about a lot of things, including the Olympics and whether the U.S. team will show up. The 2018 Winter Games kick off 2 months from now in South Korea, and some of the Olympic venues are just 40 miles from the DMZ. That puts them well within range of an incredible amount of North Korean firepower. And while the venues are ready, the U.S. ambassador to the UN left open the possibility going there might not be a good idea.
There's an open question. I have not heard anything about that, but I do know that in the talks that we have, whether it's Jerusalem, whether it's North Korea, it's always about how do we protect the U.S. citizens in the area. And so those are conversations that are happening daily.
Would you feel comfortable sending family members if they were athletes on our team?
I think it depends on what's going on at the time in the country. We have to watch this closely, and it's changing by the day.
Well, the Wall Street Journal reports ticket sales for the games are sluggish, to say the least. And video of U.S. war games over the Korean Peninsula are not exactly what a tourism board would hope for as a promotional film. This week, U.S. and South Korean forces flew hundreds of fighter jets together in a show of force and resolve. Along with the stealth fighters, there was supposed to be a pair of U.S. B-1B supersonic bombers based in Guam and likely part of any U.S. first strike on the north. As I said, supposed to be a pair of bombers. That would be 2 bombers. Turns out, Shannon, the show of force was also an abject lesson in the state of U.S. military readiness. There was only one B-1B bomber. The other was stuck on the runway in Guam with a mechanical problem.
Yeah, Leland, we've talked a great deal on this channel about our military having a tough time getting readiness done with many of these major aircraft. So thank you very much. Good to see you.
Ma'am.
All right, the House passes a major gun rights bill, but it's not without its critics, including some gun rights advocates. We're going to explain their concerns next. Passing a measure today over on the House side that would allow owners of legally concealed weapons, if they have the right permits and licenses, to take them across state lines. It now heads to the Senate, but it's not without its Republican critics. Joining me now, author of Emily Gets Her Gun, Emily Miller. Good to see you tonight.
Good to see you too.
Okay, let me start with the criticism from the left. This is what House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi has to say about this bill. The radical Republican bill is a direct threat to public safety. Republicans are inviting violent criminals, domestic abusers, convicted stalkers, and those who have never undergone a background check or received any gun safety training the green light to carry their concealed weapons wherever they want.
Okay, once again, Nancy Pelosi has voted on a bill that she hasn't read. I actually read the bill. She clearly did not. It specifically says, the language in the bill, and I wrote this in my column in the Washington Post today, it says a qualified person can do this. So I'm a qualified person. You're a qualified person too, actually. That means you're not a felon, you're not a domestic abuser, you're not dangerously mentally ill, unless you might be, and I don't know. You don't do drugs, right?
You're not.
Okay, so we are qualified people to own guns. I actually have a permit in D.C. I was the 15th
Just hard
person.
to get.
Actually, now easy. We'll talk about that another day.
Yeah.
Because you should get one. I suggest it. Yeah. But it actually, good thing you can get it in D.C. I have one. All this means is right now, this was one of Donald Trump is a permit holder in New York City. He's the first president to be a permit holder. One of his campaign promises was to pass this long-held bill, which is just so needed in our country, because I, as a permit holder in D.C., can't carry, say, into Maryland.
Without potentially getting into trouble.
I can
So
carry in
this would
Virginia,
unify.
but 2 years ago I couldn't carry in Virginia. I can carry into, say, Florida, but I can't carry into Georgia. It is so convoluted. It's
this
would constitutional right.
This would
isn't
make
a
it
law.
uniform. Okay, I want to make sure
secondary.
that I get to this quick thing because we don't have much time. But I want to ask you because there are some, including Congressman Massey out of Kentucky, who says this is going to be paired up with something in the Senate called Fix NICS. It doesn't live up to its name. It will likely do the opposite. It will throw millions of dollars at a faulty program, and it will result in more law-abiding citizens being deprived of their right to keep and bear arms. He says there's something that will happen when this joins up with the Senate measure that more people are going to get on the cannot buy list who legitimately should have a right to buy.
Top line, that's false. It actually was joined. The House put them together. So those bills are together. Fix NICS came out of the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which represents the gun dealers and the gun owners and the gun manufacturers. They are, as we saw with a terrible church shooting in Texas, that man was not supposed to have a gun. He was dangerously mentally ill. He had all these things. The military did not put his name into the FBI records. So it is absolutely not true what the congressman, with all due respect, also probably did not read the bill. No one new is going to be prevented from getting a gun. All this is doing is making sure that dealers aren't selling to people and all the records are in the FBI.
Which is something that anybody
For all of
who
us
wants to be responsible.
Right. I don't want crazy, dangerous people having guns either.
You should talk to Nancy Pelosi. Okay.
I will.
Emily Miller, thank you very much.
Call
She'll
me.
take your call. Coming up, Time Magazine names the Silence Breakers as its Person of the Year for 2017. But can you guess who the runner-ups are? We're going to tell you more after the break. Women who've spoken out against sexual harassment on social media as its 2017 Person of the Year. The cover features actress Ashley Judd, singer Taylor Swift, and former Uber engineer Susan Fowler. Here to discuss is media reporter for The Hill, Joe Concha, who says Time Magazine's gotten too PC to name a worthy Person of the Year. Joe, good to see you. How should they have handled this?
Well, let me be very clear on this before I get destroyed on Twitter and other places. This was an excellent choice, clearly. I mean, you look at the avalanche since Harvey Weinstein and all the names in entertainment, Kevin Spacey, Louis C.K., in media, Charlie Rose, Matt Lauer, Glenn Thrush, Mark Halperin, in politics, obviously, Al Franken, John Conyers, Roy Moore. Yes, this was a safe choice. It was a good choice. It's not the right choice. Because remember, the criteria by Time is that who had the most impact on the news cycle and on you? And if I ask that question, what can possibly be the only name that comes to mind in 2017, Shannon? I'll let you answer that question.
I'm thinking it might be Donald Trump. And by the way, it sounds like he was the runner-up for Time Magazine. They've acknowledged that. And I want to make sure we show this. Demi Lovato tweeted this. Time Mag highlights brave woman coming forward against sexual assault on the cover, but names a man with sexual assault allegations against him runner-up to Person of the Year. Really, Time? Hashtag hypocrites.
That's an excellent point. And look, I don't like it when groups get named. It is called Person of the Year. You want to make Movement of the Year, sell a couple of magazines, do that issue 2 weeks from now. But I'd rather they choose someone, whether it be Trump. I think Jeff Bezos would have been a good choice. I think Vladimir Putin, given the impact that Russia has had on our psyche in terms of can we hold free and fair elections, and that goes for Democrats, Republicans. I think those three choices would have been outstanding in this situation.
I want to ask you really quickly, another big award from Sports Illustrated Illustrated to Colin Kaepernick the Muhammad Ali Legacy Award.
Yeah.
The mainstream media loves him.
Oh, yes, they are swooning. And Colin Kaepernick, tell me this, has he met with one police force, one police union? Does Colin Kaepernick actually do interviews with the media in any capacity? You're going to compare him to Muhammad Ali, who never met a microphone he didn't like, who always expressed exactly what was on his mind and what his cause was. You're making a big mistake here, because Colin Kaepernick is a media creation. He doesn't actually put actions behind his words. Yes, he donated $1 million. He also made $39 million over the last 3 years. I still don't know exactly what he's standing up for. I think it's police brutality against minorities, but at the same time, I don't hear from him. And until he starts doing interviews, he's not worthy of these awards.
He's got a powerful voice and can use it for good things. We got to go, Joe, but most watched, most trusted, most grateful that you spent the evening with us. Good night from Washington. I'm Shannon Bream.